We're bringing back what has proven to be a formidable and popular team. The panel tonight consists of Shepard Ambellas and John Cullen. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
Thank
Now,
you.
It's good to be back on, man.
yeah, it's good to see you both. And, viewers are going to remember, Shepard, that it was a couple weeks ago, really kind of almost at the beginning of the pandemic, that we had you on. It occurred to me to bring you guys together on a show because, Shepard, you were the first person through your website, the news resource IntelliHub.com. You were the first one that I was aware of who was talking about helicopters in Las Vegas. And it was after that that I became aware of John and familiarized myself with all of his evidence. People who haven't yet subscribed to John's YouTube channel can go to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. We should have a simulcast of this video going right now. And there it is. People can...
Yeah, it starts 30 seconds later usually. I put on a 30-second delay.
There you go. People can watch on Crowdsource the Truth. They can watch on the John E. Hoover channel. So, Shepard, you were telling us about the return of Planet X. And the thing that I loved about this story is that it's one of these things that when you hear it, you're like, what the hell is this crazy guy talking about? But then John took the initiative of going through, running down the leads, finding the evidence, and as it turned out, you were absolutely correct. John, would you just give us, please, quickly a brief overview of how you confirmed Shepard's initial claims, and then we're going to talk about what's happened since then.
Sure. So, in fact, why don't we go and take a look on your channel as to when was that show, when Shep came on and kind of broke the news because, we were doing shows about coronavirus, and Shep got in touch with you. And, Shep and I had been in touch for a couple of years already, where we had been working together on the Vegas issue. And then the coronavirus thing happened, and I guess Shep reached out to you and was eager to get in touch. And was that the first show that we did?
No, that was the second one, actually. There was one before that. Here it is. What's in the skies? This is why we brought Shepard back on, because we were thinking there were helicopters flying around. And I didn't brief Shepard. He didn't brief me. I just had helicopters on the brain, and he knew there was something else in the skies.
Mm-hmm. And I had been for that show. If memory serves me, what was the date on this?
This was released, where does it say? I guess
April 3rd.
Do you see it?
Streamed April 3rd.
Yes, there you go.
Streamed.
So just a little over a month ago.
Okay. So a little over a month ago, we were talking about coronavirus. And one of the things we were looking at, and I think for that show, I could be wrong, but I think I prepared a bunch of flight radar stuff. And we were looking at all these spooky planes that had their tail numbers blocked and stuff like that because Shepard and I had started our research together doing flight radar.
Right.
And then Shepard comes on and starts telling us about Planet X and Nibiru and the Blue Kachina. And I'm like, what the hell is Shep talking about? But I have so much, but I've got so much respect for Shep that I'm listening and I'm like rapt listening to this. And I'm like, what the hell is this? All right. So after that show, I came away from that. And I think one of the things maybe that I've been able to do, and, I think this is worth talking about. We talk a lot on the show about biases, cognitive biases, things like anchoring bias, availability heuristic bias, ostrich bias, things like that. And one of the things that I think is real important is to keep your own biases in check and to be aware of them, right? So when Shep comes to the show and starts talking about Planet X and Nibiru and Blue Kachina and all this kind of stuff, my own biases are based on its availability heuristic bias, meaning I haven't seen any of the evidence that I know Shep has seen, because Shep, it's not like Shep had a dream and it's coming to the show to tell us this. Shep obviously has done some research, but I haven't seen it. That's called availability heuristic bias. And availability heuristic bias is so common And when you combine that with Dunning-Kruger effect, people who think they're so smart. In fact, I had somebody put a comment on one of the videos that we did together a couple weeks ago and commented, this didn't age well. And that's just classic Dunning-Kruger. Somebody who hasn't done the work, hasn't done the research, hasn't put the time in, and thinks they're so smart. And I love when they speak up in class, especially when you two guys are here. So the net of this is when you set your bias aside, you kind of check your ego and you say, all right, maybe something's here. And that's how you got me started, Jason, in this whole coronavirus investigation. I fell for the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker.
Now, Shepard had told us that it was his belief right away that the coronavirus was an umbrella operation, a cover for what was expected to be a possible extinction level event. Shepard, give us the rundown real quick for people who maybe hadn't seen those earlier shows.
So basically, at that point, when I had come onto the show in early April, I think I had already written about 150 articles on COVID. So I had traced it all the way from China to basically how it didn't really enter into America or Italy. And I started to realize there could be like some kind of separate thing going on, or there's different strains, or there's something weird, because I was getting all this conflicting information. But then one day I found out that the Johns Hopkins Institute, they control the COVID death map, also controls NASA's Project DART, which controls the trajectory of near-Earth asteroids and earthbound objects. They're in charge of mitigating stuff for the planetary defense, basically.
Absolutely true.
But they're
absolutely true.
And they're saying that they're going to start testing this equipment. But my belief is it's already been operational, and they've probably mitigated, several things by now. So I was talking about that, but I ended up uncovering there's this presidential level asteroid deflection plan that has international working groups that met back in June of 2018. And they really got concerned about these near Earth objects because there's, like John Cullen found out, there's over 2,000 of these that they're discovering now every single year at a very rapid rate. But just recently, all of this has ramped up. And knowing what I know about Planet X and my background on researching that and being able to interview Dr. Jason Rand, and more recently, I've also interviewed Marshall Masters, top Planet X researchers, and also reading Zachariah Sitchin's work on Planet X itself, or Nibiru. I remembered how such a planet, and just doing research on modern day science and astronomy, where they openly admit there's a planet 9. There's also a planet Sedna, which has entered our solar system, and they're in highly elliptical orbits, which fits this pattern of this planet X, or Nibiru. And usually when this thing comes around, supposedly around every 3,600 years ish, it comes around, and it's in a highly elliptical declination. And when it comes through and crosses the elliptic plane, it causes a lot of disturbance on Earth's interplanetary magnetic field line. It's the line that connects us to the sun. It's like a big hose, and that thing's always connecting all the planets to the sun, like a big octopus. The tentacles, and all the planets are on the end of the tentacles. But what happens when you get like a really heavy disturbance, or a really heavy coronal mass ejection, or a dual coronal mass ejection, that interplanetary magnetic field line can just start waving, like if you took a garden hose and whipped it, how it gets like a wave.
Yeah, like a
down
shock
it.
wave through it.
Yeah, and that can literally cause a pole shift or a crustal shift, and lots of things. Plus, just this planet coming around when it does, through documented history. It's been documented through all these different cultures all across Earth. It causes general disturbance as it enters, and then it ramps back down as it exits the solar system. And that cycle generally takes about 27 months, which also kind of correlates with how they keep saying these lockdowns are going to extend over 2 years and all this. But yet they're acting like they're going to lift them. But yeah, they keep kind of extending them. And
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that
kind of weird.
The other thing that you've predicted from the beginning, Shepard, is that we're going to be locked down indefinitely. I hope that part of the prediction isn't right. You know, one of the things that
Right.
I discovered after John started, digging into some of the statements that you'd made on the first show, that this really caused everything to click in for me. When you say Planet X, and I mean, this is the reason why I'm making these kind of like comical 1950s sci-fi looking graphics with you in a spacesuit, because it's like you're there on Planet X and Cullen is hanging out with you. But the thing that clicked it in for me is that you didn't name it Planet X, and it's not some science fiction story. It was discovered or hypothesized about back at the time when they had just discovered Pluto, which was the ninth planet, and it was named Planet X, with the X being the Roman numeral for 10, by astronomers at the time. And the whole thing, just putting it in that context, made a lot more logical sense at that point.
And do you know why? Do you know why they hypothesize that it exists? Is because when you look at the elliptical plane of the planets, and I'm sure Shep will confirm this, the planets don't go around the sun in a perfect circle. It's elliptical, and it's as if there's this other object out there, but we don't see it. And so it's like there's another piece there should be. And I also looked into what Shep was saying about the binary star systems. So Shep was saying that most stars are binary stars. And I was like, really? Is that really true? And so I dug into that. And yep, that's really true too. Most stars are binary stars. And most of the binary star pairings, or many of them, do have a red dwarf. And so the stuff that you hear from Shepard, although Shepard sounds like he's on the beach, Shep's on the money all the time. I mean, it's just like again and again and again. His stuff.
I've had the privilege
work.
of I've had the privilege of I mean, part of it's just my own natural desire to find out when I'm being lied to or whatever by the government. But I've also interviewed like hundreds of people over the last 10 or 12, 15 years, and as you guys have, but I've had the opportunity to interview straight up CIA whistleblowers, NSA whistleblowers, people in chemtrail programs. I mean, the whole gambit. And I think that, talking to all these people also kind of helped me piece this together, because it's so multi-pronged and so multifaceted. Like, people are asking me questions like, well, you said it was deadly in China. Why isn't there no one in hospitals here? Are you going to retract what you said? No, it's like my whole investigation stands. But the way I look at it now is whatever was going on in China probably wasn't really a virus, because it didn't really, I don't think it crossed borders ever. And I think what we're seeing here is just a bad flu season or the normal coronavirus. And they've hyped the numbers, but whatever was in China might have been even something as much as cyanide poisoning, or in the air or water, or for all we know, all that stuff they sprayed into the atmosphere was like the death kill. But it didn't seem to cross. I had reporters telling me they were in Italy and they're just like, Shepard, I don't even believe this, because no one's even dropping dead. Nothing's even going on. And I'm like, are these guys crazy? And then all of a sudden, Jason Goodman's walking around New York and there's no one in the hospitals. And then I start checking into it, and like every hospital on the planet's empty, basically. And then they got these triage things, and then the ventilators, and then, oh, we'll just add them to the stockpile for a future event. Oh, right. But here, we're sending out 30,000 trauma surgeons that deal with impact wounds. And, I mean, so the list went on.
Each of us is experiencing this cognitive dissonance, right? Jason's walking around Javits, and he's watching what's going on at Javits. And meanwhile, they're not bringing anybody there. right? And they bring
Yeah.
in a ship, right? They bring in a boat, but they're not bringing anybody there either. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Shep is telling us on the show that they're mobilizing the National Guard and that they've called up the National Guard, and the National Guard is mobilizing all over the country, and it's on the news, is what Shep tells us in the shows a couple weeks ago. And again, availability heuristic bias kicks in for me because I haven't seen, I don't watch television. The only news I get to watch is like I'm like in a time warp. I get to watch your news on YouTube the next day, basically. So that's how I get to see the news, and I check Drudge Report and stuff like that. But I don't get television, so I don't really get to see what the coverage is. But what I see Jason walking around in Jacob Javits, and there's no patients, and they're bringing in the ships, and there's no patients, and Shep is telling everybody, no, they're mobilizing all over the country. And I'm thinking, really? They're mobilizing all over the country? I haven't seen footage of that. So I take my own bias, I put it in check, put it on the shelf, and I dig in and I start researching. And this week I put out a video that you'll find on the Johnny Hoover channel. It's basically confirmation of what Shepard Ambellas told us 4 weeks ago. Shep comes on the show and says, guys, they are mobilizing. They're mobilizing, right? The National Guard is out there and they're setting up. They're setting up all over the place. And because we haven't necessarily seen that evidence, we question it.
Yeah.
And what I do is I question it initially, but then I kind of look in the mirror a little bit and say, okay, but that's just me being biased because I haven't seen what Shepard's seen. So I set my bias aside and I dig in. And so I did a video called the Nobel Peace Prize. And you can just, if you just click on it and scrub 4, 5, 6 minutes in, you'll get the gist of what's going on. Forget the front of it and just go like mid video, anywhere in the middle of the video. Because it's like a 20-minute. Yeah, let's listen to it for one or 2 minutes. It's interesting. If you just go anywhere in the middle, fat middle of it.
Open beds in hospitals means the basketball building with over 100 workers inside sits without any cases. Gomberg says they are working with the chief medical officers of surrounding hospitals every day to monitor volume. But no patients is a good thing.
If we never see a patient, that would...
Wow. So here's a mainstream news story saying that the hospitals in Philadelphia are really low.
Well, this is no. These are special hospitals. So these hospitals aren't really low. These hospitals are empty.
Temple University.
Empty.
So this is built in the stadium at Temple University or something.
Correct. So basically what Shep was saying, I went and confirmed local news by local news. I went to Sacramento, Santa Clara, went to Chicago, Illinois. We went to Miami Beach. We went to Boston. Did you know that we put 1,000 extra beds in Rhode Island?
Wow.
And
Did not know that.
None of these facilities ever saw a single patient.
Wow.
All right. And when you see the size and the scale, so now I believe the president was speaking last night at some event or something. I think he went to visit Mask Factory or something. And one of the things the president was saying was that this mobilization that Shepard was telling us about 4 weeks ago, the president said was the largest mobilization since World War II. Now, the question that we put on the table is the largest mobilization since World War II for a respiratory infection that's killed half as many people as influenza this year? Is that why we did this?
I like it that Trump tours the Mask Factory without a mask and NBC trolls him, but I prefer it that he's not got the mask.
But he's wearing glasses. He's wearing safety glasses, which is great.
Well, first the machinery, I guess.
All right, but if you hop back to that video again, because you're going to see Rhode Island, you're going to see Miami, you're going to see Santa Clara, you're going to see, I mean, and like bop around in there, hop, yeah. This is Miami. That's in the UK. So this is on the Thames. They put 4,000 beds on the Thames. All right, so they were in on this. They knew what was happening as well.
Hmm.
Certain
Shepard had
countries
said
knew. Certain
these were all
countries knew. Certain countries did not.
triage hospitals for anticipated potential
Correct.
casualties from a hit. But there
Not
were actually
right.
some sort of like, what do you call them, celestial objects that hit.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But the first thing to acknowledge is what Shep told us a month ago, that this mobilization was underway, that it was a major mobilization. The president last night confirmed it was the largest mobilization since World War II. Confirmed by the president last night.
But it was conducted covertly.
Correct. And Shep broke it here on Crowdsource the Truth a month ago and told you this was happening. But the audience, but because of availability heuristic bias, people tended to say, nah, come on, really, is that happening? Well, this video confirms it. Now, the other little thing that's going on here, and this is called gaslighting, and both of you are two of the top experts on gaslighting and probably can recite all the different techniques used in gaslighting. But you're not going to believe this, Jason. They're now reporting that there were 1,100 patients treated at Jacob Javits.
Huh.
Jacob Javits never saw a single patient.
Well, I don't know if that's correct. I mean, what I wanted to say about Jacob, well, I'm not sure. I mean, I had gone
any footage. I can't find any footage of any patients.
But let me just address it.
You know what the thing is, though, guys, that's just really weird about all this is how the General O'Shaughnessy is locked down in Northcom. He's the aerospace commander. How there's this joint task force that's in charge of securing the whole capital region, their seaboard, land, airspace. They're going to take people out of rubble of the White House if they need to. They're going to put people in bunkers if they need to. Also, like, where's Congress? They're supposed to be like at their homes in their basements, but like, are they in an underground base? I mean, like, there's a lot of weird things that don't add up, but they kind of paint like the perfect picture. You also have powers were vested into Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, to basically make him like a co-president. But then I think I even tweeted this out, and I also had all the information on it. And then it's like as if someone came in my system and pulled it. Like, I can't find anything on this, and I had like straight up U.S. government documentation on it.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's really alarming to me. And if anyone can find anything on it, basically it said something like, power of president's been vested into Michael Pompeo, and it was actual government documentation. And also there's some other general or task force commander who's in charge of another additional task force who has separate authority to act as well. And they went in and they did a new executive order President Trump signed, where basically they went in and said, what's going to be the chain of succession with the Department of the Interior.
Newsweek covered it. It's a Newsweek. Newsweek covered this. This isn't, this isn't Shepard, dreaming. This is in Newsweek. Newsweek did an article about the chain of command in Washington, D.C. and continuity of government. Absolutely. The top secret plans. That's it. That's the article. So again, what Shepard is telling you, spot on. This, and when you look at this, and then you watch that video that I put together that goes city by city by city, and you see 1,000 extra beds in Rhode Island.
You see the duration of this video?
33 seconds.
Just saying.
I see. When you're right, you're right.
Now, just back on the Javits Center Hospital for a minute. I was going by there frequently, but I wasn't really hanging out there. There is another YouTuber by the name of Lincoln Kareem, and people can visit his YouTube channel. He's been taking a different tactic. He's been sort of I don't know him. I haven't had an opportunity to speak to him, but just from looking at some of his other work, it appears that he's a photographer and an independent filmmaker. He does a lot of nature photography, so he has some pretty long telephoto lenses, and he spoke to some of the military people, but some of the most interesting work that he did, he sort of staked out these locations and produced videos that are sometimes over an hour or even 2 hours in length, where he's just filming everybody going in there. And I agree with the assessment that he certainly did not see any patients coming in. I don't think he even saw an ambulance pull up. He did record a ridiculously large number of military, soldiers walking in there. And just from my own personal experiences in walking around New York City, coupled with, reviewing a lot of these videos that were shot by Lincoln Kareem, I do believe that Javits Center was more likely a military base of operations, and that obviously that's, a confidential, top secret kind of thing. So the story for the public is that it's a hospital and we don't need to know about what's going on there.
Well, even if it is just a emergency hospital, what you're going to see in the video that we were just looking at on my channel again, when you go to Rhode Island and you go to Boston and you go to Miami and you go to Philadelphia and you go to all these cities, Kentucky, okay, Chicago, every one of them, the one constant is these are not for coronavirus patients. These are not for coronavirus patients. And then one person slips up and says, over here, they're for the injured. Now, what kind of injured are you expecting from coronavirus?
Wow.
What kind of injuries? Okay. So this is why when you watch local television clips and you put this stuff together and you sit there and you're like, wait a second, look at the size and the scale of this operation of
we have to take into consideration they've approved over 1 million ready reserve troops. Basically kind of covertly on the back end. They've already put out over 30,000 trauma surgeons that deal straight up with impact wounds. And they've sent these around to hospitals and to these makeshift hospitals that are like triage facilities, basically. They've distributed dust masks and oxygen cylinders to these hospitals and personnel. And these hospitals are set up to take straight up oxygen into the air in a lot of cases, these makeshift ones. And they've also deployed over 30,000 National Guard, and all that's openly admitted. But also another thing to point out is early on into this, they've also disappeared 13,000 Americans that I tracked. Entire cruise ship.
What do you mean?
So like,
who and where?
So like I keep forgetting about this, but I stopped tracking it because it was just like I already knew it was happening and it was like bad. But basically, in the beginning, when all this started happening, we could probably go back on intelhub.com because it's all in a chronological order on the main page. And you got to go like 200 reports back probably. But mainstream started reporting, and people can check into this. I don't really have time to do it, but they started reporting, look, there's like 8,000 people in California quarantined. There's like 4,000 people in Oregon quarantined on military bases. There's like 3,000 people in Oregon quarantined on military bases. Now they're taking an entire ship and they're taking it to 2 military bases and quarantining 4,000 people from an entire cruise ship. Now, so there was like 13,000 people openly admitted taken to military bases, and there was 11 military bases openly admitted that they had camps on, and then these people were like never heard from since, basically.
Wow. What did Amon Bundy say about? He's very constitution oriented. The Bundys are obviously the ranchers who have had their constitutional rights trampled and were imprisoned for many years. What did Amon tell you?
Yeah, I talked to him last week, and basically he's worried that it's too late. People aren't going to stand up for their rights, and it could be game over if they don't, stand up and speak out. He was up in supporting that lady where her kids where she was having her kids play at the park, and she got arrested. Yeah, so he was in support of her, and they went and served the local mayor and whatnot and of the town in a manner that's a real legal manner, and they went about it in a certain way to where they can basically, request that action be taken. So we're going to see what happens with that. But he also said when he was in prison for the Malheur wildlife standoff,
Yeah.
that they had this book in there and it didn't have a cover, and because some books aren't like approved for prison, he said it turns out, he read it and everything, and it turns out the book was Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. And it's weird, he was telling me about this. I've never heard him talk like this. He was telling me about this book. I read this book when I was like 14 years old, and it's pretty much a game changer for, like, I guess I already dabbled in that, and to me it was like interesting, and I kind of knew some of it was going on already even at 14. But this book is pretty thick book, and it's amazing, and it's a good book to start from for people who haven't read a lot of books on how everything works with, like, the New World Order and certain agendas. Well, he lined everything out. Anyways, he ended up getting killed basically.
Wow.
In Arizona. But this is a famous book. If anyone hasn't read it, they need to get it right away. And also, I almost knocked this over, but before I forget, this is Shade, the motion picture of my film that I made in 2013, and it took over 2 years to make. And basically, it was made ahead of its time, and everything in it now came to fruition basically, and it's very interesting film. And if you haven't seen it, especially interesting to watch right now. It's available for free on YouTube, but this is that actual autograph version. Anyone that wants to support my work and donates $100 or more at intellihub.com in the top right, or at intellihub.com/donate. I'll sign personally their copy of Shade, the motion picture. These are my last personal copies of the film, and they'll never be any.
Where can people
print.
find that link?
So at the main page of intellihub.com at the top right, or intellihub.com/donate. And if you send in $100 or more, I'll sign a copy of this for you. And just make sure and put your address where I mail it to in there, or email me. And, these are my last personal copies right here. So, it's a good memorabilia, I guess,
Yeah, even if people choose to watch it on YouTube, that's a nice thing to have, a signed copy from Shepard. So people can go to intellihub.com/donate, click on that donate button. That's going to take you to Shepard's PayPal, and make sure you include a note if you contribute more than $100 and want a signed copy of the movie Shade. Make sure you get over there to intellihub.com/donate.
But I can't thank you guys enough as well, and I want to encourage everyone to support you guys as well, and all of my listeners that are listening to this to support your work as well, because what you all do is very important. And I find myself watching your videos all the time, and it's, I feel like we're all on the front lines right here, and we're risking a lot to do this. And it takes a lot to do this. I don't do it for money or anything, obviously. Over the years, I've just kept on doing it no matter what. I could tell people stories that would just blow their minds, but, I'm just going to keep on doing it no matter what. Just basically simply because I'm not a slave, and I'm not going to, fall into tyranny and let everything go awry and the government take over. I'm just not gonna sit here and let that happen. And whether it does or not, at least I know I tried.
Let me ask you, I guess,
you did more than
try.
try. Yeah, you did more than try. You have no idea.
Yeah, and people should be checking IntelliHub daily. You know, it's interesting. I noticed you've got this article on IntelliHub about the police helicopters harassing people in California. If I'm not mistaken, and John, maybe you know better than me, this looks like a Boeing AH-6I with the no-tar option.
That's right. Yeah, well, so Boeing doesn't make it with no tar. That's when you got to go to Lynn Tilton. So if you want that version, you got to buy that from Lynn. So Lynn Tilton sold them that helicopter. It's the MD-500 no tar. Fantastic helicopter. I wish I knew how to fly it. It's gotta be a blast. If Bill Burr is listening, Bill Burr is nodding his head and going, "Yep, we want one of those."
He likes to fly helicopters. It's true. I've had enough helicopters. I don't want to go in any more helicopters. I don't need to go any more helicopters. I prefer drones because when they crash, I just call the insurance company. Now, I want to ask you guys, because there was actually some, stuff that hit, right? Wasn't there a comet or something that hit in Nigeria or something like that?
Well, tell you what, why don't you cue up that video, because I kind of go through sequentially what happened and confirm Shepard's research. So why don't you cue that up to 1:50 and we'll just show everybody sequentially, because I think a couple things happened. This hypothesis I'm going to be putting forward this weekend. We'll be talking about it on our Friday show. I'll be putting a video out that sort of summarizes my hypothesis, similar to what I did in Vegas. So on the Vegas research, I put out a video basically at the end of November that was sort of the summary, the wrap up. Here's the hypothesis, and here's the supporting evidence. And I plan to do the same thing here, but it's all based on Shepard. So my hypothesis is based on Shepard's research and foundation. And so it's very important that everybody understand that my hypothesis, by the way, is, again, this is broad. This is big. So why don't we queue up to 1:50? Let's roll, and if I can talk over it like a director's commentary or whatever, if we can do that, I'll explain, and you guys can ask questions.
Do you want sound on it or no?
If you can do like 50% sound, and then I can talk over it, that might be good. So it's probably just my creepy music.
And before we roll it, John, I want to let everybody know, because we might have people watching who haven't seen you before, who haven't seen me before. The Friday show that you're talking about is a sponsor-exclusive show that happens on patreon.com and subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, and patreon.com and subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth. People who sponsor the show are making sure that they don't have some kind of giant corporate billionaire telling the news what they can and can't report on. Certainly some of the stuff we talk about is very unpopular. So by using this micro sponsorship model where the viewers are the sponsors, people know that there's no undue economic influence on the reporting, and it's a great way for us to be able to explore all kinds of things that might otherwise not get covered. So let's take a look at this video here.
All right, let's cue it up. That's a little loud. So on or about March 12th, 13th, I believe the president was shown what you're about to see here. And the illusion has been that if you go through the press and you look at the articles and you go online and you read everything, it's all about a particular object. It's about 1998 OR2 or 2020 GE or a particular object. What you're going to watch here is a phenomenon that is unprecedented. This hasn't happened in the modern era. And Shepard was right. Take a look at this. You're watching the little blue dot is the Earth. And so the illusion has been in the press, each article is about an individual object. The threat was from 30 or 40 near-Earth objects all coming together around the Earth on a particular date. And if you look at the date that it all kind of comes together, you're going to see that it was April 26th and 27th. And so on the 26th and 27th of April, we experienced the near-Earth object event unlike any in the modern era. This has never been seen before. And I confirmed that, and I played this thing backwards 500 years and forwards 500 years. So there's nothing that looks like it before or after. But the bad news is, like Shepard said, we're only aware of 1% of these near-Earth objects. So these are just the ones we can see with our headlights on. We can't see the other 99%. But this occurred on April 26th and 27th, and it was unprecedented.
Wow. It's impressive
I believe,
animation you've put together here, John.
So this is what I believe this was shown to the president on or about March the 12th. And the reason is, on March the 14th, the president declared a national emergency in all 50 states, and that's unprecedented. So if they show this to the president and they say, Mr. President, you see that moment? Boom, right there. Okay. That's never happened before. And so if they say, Mr. President, there is a 1 in something. I don't know the denominator. Pick a number. Is it 77? Is it 114? Is it 33? Right? Is it your favorite number? What is the scenario that they are saying to the president that Mike Pompeo says we're in an exercise? This is a live exercise.
Well, now check this out. I uncovered something recently. So there's an article on IntelliHub's main page called Asteroid Impact Drill Uncovered. Fictitious press release reveals government's April 29th doomsday role play. And then it says a 2019 asteroid deflection exercise just so happened to begin on April 29th. There's that date again.
Yeah. This event, hang on, this event took place in Washington at a big hotel. So you've got the links here, right? Those are hyperlinks in your article. Do you link to the event? Because you can go right to the hotel and you see they had, there you go. So this scenario, they did a whole modeling scenario exactly a year ago, but they only do these things every 2 years. It's a biannual kind of event.
Right.
So they only do them every 2 years. But exactly, Shepard's, I saw this research as well, 1 year ago in Washington.
Now, large fragments have came in. There was one in Nigeria that struck. There was another
hang on. You're jumping ahead. This was put on, I think, by Johns Hopkins. So Johns Hopkins helped coordinate all this thing. Okay. So again, what Shepard pointed out earlier in the show tonight, Johns Hopkins. Yeah, there you go. That's the projected track of the object that they were modeling might hit the Earth. And so all right. So this was in the exercise a year ago.
This is on April 29th, that the 1 year in advance.
But they think it's an exercise and nobody knows. Now, the thing is, these objects that just showed up, I don't know that we knew about it 90 days earlier. These NEOs, in fact, Jason, if you can just go to theskylive.com and we'll pull up the NEOs. I'm going to show you one of the top 10 closest was 48 hours ago in history. One of the top 10 closest asteroids to miss Earth in history was 48 hours ago. And and it's about half the size of the one that formed Meteor Crater in Arizona. All right, so you're at the Sky Live. Go up to the top, and click on Near Earth Objects, or NEOs, Near Earth Objects. Yep, click on that. All right, now scroll down to May 4th. And look at the distance on May 4th of my friend 2020 JJ. Yeah. That's 4,000 miles. That's unprecedented. That's top 10. That's one of the closest shaves in the last 120 years.
4,000 miles. I mean,
that was
you've
Monday.
Flown further. I flew further on the plane to go see you in Thailand.
Yeah. So this is our geosynchronous satellites are in the 20 to 24,000 mile range, and that's kilometers. The articles on this show it to be about 4,000 miles up when it missed. Now, the thing that's interesting is, can you pull up an article If you just do a quick search on what's it called, Mount Lemmon Observatory, asteroid, Mount Lemmon Observatory asteroid. Let's see. And that's just in general. Scroll down. Let's see if we pick up a story that came in. Just comet discovered at Mount Lemmon. Nope, that's 8 years ago. Keep going down. Mount Lemmon.
I think Shepard just sent something. How about if I click news?
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, space.com.
All right. It turns out that this 2020 JJ that was picked up was just noticed, meaning it wasn't even on the NEO list last week.
Wow.
And it flew by on Monday. And it was picked up, and it's picked up by Mount Lemmon. Mount Lemmon.
John, this has been going on like every day almost. I found out that on the 29th, the day that I was saying OR2 is going to come around and that they're all worried about it. Well, it turns out they activated the whole planetary defense system on the 29th, the very day I said they were going to do it. They activated the whole entire planetary defense system.
All right, so here's what they said they were doing. Okay, so, and this is fascinating, Jason. I mean, it's really given me the creeps, because I'm starting to read stuff in National Geographic, and I'm starting to read stuff in Scientific American, and I'm like, are they able to just control everything? Because it's pretty stunning. National Geographic did an article. That's what I have it here in my hand, Shep, and you're spot on the money. According to this article, NASA plans to slam a spacecraft. This is the DART project. But the date of the test is Wednesday, the 29th of April. All right, so what Shepard is saying, that was the date supposedly of the DART test, according to National Geographic. But then when you try and find anything to show you the results of the DART test, there's nothing there.
Yeah, but check this out.
Wait, hang on. As if there was no DART test. Okay? So they start by telling you there's a DART test. Then the day comes and goes. Now, if you go back to that model I showed you with all those objects converging on the Earth, again, the illusion is they want you to talk about OR2, where they're doing the DART test. They talk about individual objects.
Right.
That's not the problem. The
Meanwhile,
problem is
another asteroid was. Yeah. There was another one. Check this out. It specifically had this is openly admitted now mainstream media, which basically vindicates what I said. It was discovered just hours prior to, on April 29th, just hours before I was saying OR2 was going to pass. They found out that with a 10% or greater chance that this thing could impact Earth, this is out of this publication, New Atlas. They report a small asteroid came within a cosmic hairbreadth of the ring of communication satellites circling the Earth's geosynchronous orbit this week, passing by our planet at an altitude of 35,000 kilometers or 22,000 miles. The object, measuring 4 to 8 meters, which is 13 to 20 feet in diameter, whizzed past the nearest satellite on April 28th, 2020 at 1849 Grand Mountain Time at a distance of 750 miles on the closest Earth, on one of the closest Earth flybys ever recorded. This literally happened the day that I said this was going to happen, and it prompted them to activate the whole entire planetary defense system, and they thought that satellites were going to come crashing down because this was going to hit satellites and other things.
It's a damn good thing it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
they may have mitigated it. There's footage of this.
Well, again, I think they came to the president with the model that I just showed you. They brought him this model and said, Mr. President, there's some sort of risk that either satellites are going to get knocked out, these things are going to hit the Earth, whatever, and there's some probability of this happening. And as Shepard showed us 4 weeks ago, the White House already had a near-Earth object collision preparedness plan. Shepard brought that to the table in PDF format straight from the White House.
That it appeared to me as a trends analyst, that it just appeared to me like they were getting more geared up for it, like it was getting dire. So like everything they've done seems dire, that they're getting to this point, and then they were working up to that point to where all these asteroids are coming in. But I just feel like that's the first part of this because of how the lockdowns are arranged and how the dates are working. So they're expecting future events, and so they had to lock us down, and either they mitigated things or things were a close shave, which we've seen objects come in the atmosphere like on a lot of video lately, large objects. But maybe they had to start these lockdowns at a certain point because that's when they thought that objects could start hitting, or they started mitigating objects, and they've been mitigating them this whole entire time, or they've been missing
right,
just by a close shave.
Let me share some numbers with you that are going to give you some goosebumps. The target date to have all those field hospitals. So first of all, how many field hospitals did we build in America? So the president said that we mobilized, right? This mobilization was the largest thing we've done since World War II. How many field hospitals did we build? Like Jacob Javits. And then how many were shown on national television? Just Jacob Javits.
Yeah.
You didn't get, right, on national TV, you didn't see anybody going out and showing you that, hey, guess what? We built one in Boston and Miami and Philadelphia, and right?
Right.
Why
no,
didn't
it
we,
seems like a ton of attention has been focused on New York with the coronavirus thing.
Correct. So keep that in mind now, right? So then we have the president declaring this national emergency on, I think it was March 12th, excuse me. And when he declared the national emergency, we had 204 people dead from coronavirus. All right. A national emergency in 50 states has never been declared, not since George Washington. As a president declared a national emergency in all 50 states at the same time. It's never happened.
Now, for that to happen, my research shows that, remember, I was telling you guys in a previous show about the Rex 84 concentration camps that are made for the American people that Reagan and Oliver North made, and all this relates to this planet that the IRAS telescope discovered, and this whole thing. People will have to go back and watch the show, but basically this all dovetails into how this has been activated through the Stafford Act, how everything's progressed all the way along to this point, has been put into place for some event that they knew of that was coming years ago.
Mm-hmm. All right, can we go back to that footage that we were rolling from with the animation, because after they show the president that animation and they say to the president on March 12th or 11th, right, the day before he locks down the country, they show him this model and give him a probability and say, Mr. President, there is a probability of 1 in something, whatever the number is, and Jason, it's probably 33, that one of these objects is going to hit the Earth. And Mr. President, as Shepard Ambellas has shown everybody, we have a plan. We have a plan. It's rather dramatic, Mr. President, but so is this video. This animation that we're seeing here, hey, this has never happened before. So now the reason I think Shepard is correct, why is Shepard right? How is it clear to me that what we're seeing at all these field hospitals is consistent? Well, one of the things has to do with the president's legacy was the economy, jobs, everything was going great. Everything was going well. We locked down everything with 200 people dead and lost our economy. And he lost his platform. And the saying in the South,
I wish he would have told me. I wish he would have told me to Mike Pompeo.
All right, so hang on. So in the South, there's a saying, it's like shooting your own dog. I mean, he sacrificed his own legacy and everything he and his administration built. And you have to, think for a second and say, wait a second. Did we build all of these field hospitals And he sacrificed everything he and his administration worked to put together for a respiratory infection, and we've got 200 people dead? Or was Shepard Ambellas right?
Yeah.
And the answer is Shepard Ambellas was right. There was, I mean, this animation, I didn't create that. That's JPL math going in circles, right? So when we look at that model that we were just watching, that animation of the objects coming.
Well, I just want to say, we've got some people in the comments who are laughing that it's an animation. What it is it's a visualization of recorded data. Obviously, we can't go into space and make a video, but I think that's pretty interesting. Yeah. We also have Renee estimating that there's a 33.666 chance, and I think that might be right.
Most likely. So again, the gist here is, if they bring this to the president with a certain probability, the actions that we're seeing, right, and the actions that we've seen with these field hospitals,
it
that
looks
again,
like that
Shepard told us was happening.
That triggers that, the threshold that triggers that, it appears to be 10% impact probability. So anything with a 10%.
Let's roll the video. Go back to the video now and hit play. Let's go back to the video and let's see what happens to the president after he realizes, oh my gosh, okay, so this has never happened before in the modern era, right? And then what happens? Okay, so Mike Pompeo says we're on a live exercise, and on the board to his, as we're looking at this, it's off to the right. You see there's 204 people dead. And the seal of the president is no longer on the stand. All right, so the seal of the President of the United States is not on the podium. It says the White House.
A lot of people noticed that, yeah.
Right, and so that may mean that command is transferred to NORAD. So when they transfer to FEMA, FEMA reports into NORAD. When you say you've transferred everything to FEMA, that's the nice way of saying NORAD's in control, and that's General O'Shaughnessy. So General O'Shaughnessy of NORAD is running the show once they turn everything over. And then March 28th, this is 2 weeks after they tell the president that they see all these things. Then we have this event happens in Nigeria exactly 2 weeks later on the 28th of March. All right, now we've got a professor. All right, so the professor from the university who studied in Korea and Japan shows up here and says, this is absolutely a meteor. This isn't a bomb. And there's footage in here. So I'm going to release this later tonight for the Patreon and Subscribe Star folks, and you'll be able to watch this, and you'll be able to hear from the professor explaining this is absolutely a meteor strike. So this happens 2 weeks after they warn the president. So the president is warned. 2 weeks later, this happens. Okay.
It's pretty convincing.
We begin building field hospitals immediately.
Right.
Immediately. Now, here's the other thing that's fascinating. The field hospitals are ready for April the 20th. And effective May the 1st, they're no longer needed, and they're all being packed up and shipped back. So the boat, the Hope is done. So they were all in place. And by the way, the number's 114. We built 114 field hospitals. They were all up for 10 days. And now they're gone.
Huh.
Those hospitals were never intended for COVID patients. Never. And they'll tell you that. You watch the video, they'll tell you that these are not for COVID patients. And now they're gone. Shepard Ambellas was right all along.
John Vano's got a good question. Do we know what size that meteor was that hit Nigeria?
I'd be estimating based on other impacts. So I did a video a couple weeks ago based on the Chelyabinsk hit in Russia. And the Chelyabinsk meteor hit a lake, hit the ice, went into the water. And the Russians, they went in the lake and got the meteor, right? So they wrapped a bunch of chains around it and dragged it out of the damn lake.
Wow.
So the meteor, it's pretty wild footage.
What video is that?
Excuse me. The one that I did, probably one of the ones that looks like a spaceship or something. Where do viruses come from? Yeah, probably where do viruses come from? Yeah. That's a long video though. It's an hour long. Somewhere in there is the Chelyabinsk meteor event, and
There it is.
No, that's Tic Tac. That's Tic Tac or
There
Gimbal.
it is.
Yeah, that's not Chelyabinsk. Those are UFOs in Vegas. All right. I'm sure the audience knows or you just pull it up. Just do a quick search on Chelyabinsk. Chelyabinsk. Chelyabinsk meteor. So it's about the size, I would say, of a coffee table, what they pulled out of the lake. I'd say about the size of a coffee table. I think they weighed it in at about 1,600 pounds, I think. And they said that the impact was like 20 times Hiroshima. So
wow.
a rock the size of a coffee table, when it's going 40,000 miles an hour, creates an impact like a Hiroshima kind of a thing. And they, again, God bless the Russians, they dragged this thing out of the lake.
And what did they find?
You can see it.
What does that meteor
there's like a
have in it?
There's like I don't know, iron, what are the standard meteor stuff? Who knows? But they have like
they have a standard.
They're worth $10,000.
They have a museum. Yeah, they have a museum. There's a Chelyabinsk Meteor Museum because they dragged it out of the lake, and you can see the meteor now. But it's not that big. So the ones that are missing the Earth, like the one that just missed the Earth on Monday,
big ones would make a big problem.
Yeah, like a Winnebago.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, it went through the lake. They went in and got it, dragged it out of the lake, and there's video somewhere on YouTube of these guys chaining this thing up and dragging it out of there. It's wild footage to watch. And, nobody's got a Geiger counter. Nobody's
so here
checking
it is compared to the Eiffel Tower and the Empire State Building. It's big, but it's not that big.
That's
it's not like
Chelyabinsk?
The size of Texas. That's what this says. Chelyabinsk Meteor Wikipedia.
There you go.
Russian meteor.
20 meter
bolide that entered Earth's atmosphere over Russia on February 15th, 2013. Interesting. Chelyabinsk meteor. Yeah.
So
that's pretty good.
So that was major. When you look at the hole in Nigeria, that Nigerian crater, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the size of a volleyball, the size of a basketball, something like that. It would be my guess going at that kind of speed. Anything a whole lot bigger than that, you start getting massive craters.
This was pretty big. I mean, look at the people standing around it. That has to be pretty
sizable
shocking.
Crater. Imagine a basketball going 40,000 miles an hour into the Earth. But again, if it gets a whole lot bigger than that, you're talking major devastation. Once the rock gets to be the size of a car, you're in trouble.
And we've got some people in the chat here saying that they've heard that there's another comet coming. Shepard, is that correct?
Right. So Comet Atlas actually broke up into 5 major pieces, and there's also Comet Swan, but there's the main body of Atlas, and then there's 4 other chunks of it. And from my calculations, and I'm trying to find an astronomer that will correlate this with me, because I'm not a total expert on this, but from my calculations and another YouTuber who's pretty keen on this type of information, we both came up with the same calculation that this thing's going to come with 273 miles of the sun and basically be absorbed by the sun. And we don't know if this is going to be a separate coronal mass ejection or a major event or just not that big at all or what. But the main body of Atlas appears like it's only going to come within 273 miles of the sun if you run the conversions. But I'm trying to get some kind of expert to confirm my math on it. But that's what we're working with right now.
Wow.
It's a little bit sad. It's a little bit of a sad story, though. I mean, the whole thing with Well, I mean,
Now Comet Swan though is supposed to come in mid-May. Now it makes its closest approach to Earth on May 13th, and on May 28th it reaches its perihelion with the sun when it's its closest point to the sun. So there is all these different objects, and there's all these people on Twitter saying like, look, man, there's this star, and a lot of people are saying it's Venus, but a lot of people are saying it's too bright. And then they're filming other objects like moving around this object. And there's a lot of chatter like I've never seen before. And it's just really odd. So like I encourage everyone to go outside with their cameras, especially like if you have one of those P900s or whatever, and just start filming everything every night that you can. And obviously send it to IntelliHub or John Cullen or Crowdsource the Truth if you find anything. But there is some pretty interesting videos surfacing on a daily basis now. Objects are coming in like bus-sized objects, fragmenting in the air over New Guinea. Just very odd and suspicious activity with weather.
Wow.
The whole 9 yards.
You know what? The weather's been weird here in New York. It was like hot one day, it was cold today, raining. It's kind of all over the place. I mean, that makes sense. If there's a lot of stuff going on in space that it affects us, with the weather and all that. I have to say, I, for one, am pleased that no extinction level event occurred. We're getting close to the end of our show here for today. Anything else we want to cover, guys?
Well, the good news is when you go to the model, what I would call peak risk, which is the moment when all those objects came together around the Earth, I would call that moment peak risk. That peak risk moment was April 26th, 27th, and 28th. And again, that's what Shepard told us, right? We knew about the DART test with OR2. So Shepard was right on the money. The DART
now,
test
I feel
didn't.
like my new analysis of this is that's not the peak risk. That's only one of many events that are to come that are going to even ramp up.
Well, hang on. I haven't finished my thought yet. So hang on. Let me finish. So this is an event based on objects that we just became aware of. So to Shepard's point, we just turned on the headlights. And now that we've got headlights, we're looking at this stuff. Now, I did run the simulator to see, do we have another event that shows up obviously in the next year or 2 or 3? And the answer is, with these objects, no. However, we didn't know about Monday's object.
Yeah. Right.
On Friday, right? So these guys saw this thing on a Saturday and it flies right by.
I do want to add one thing for people who watch this and maybe become nervous that there's things coming towards the Earth. Without being a scientist and without employing any like math or whatever, we're just like a dot floating in space, and there's just an unlimited number of things flying around every direction. So, I mean, on the one hand, it's sort of like, I love it. It's if they actually shot a rocket at something that prevented it from hitting the Earth, that is pretty damn impressive that they were able to invent that and make that work. But at the same time,
there's evidence of that on IntelliHub. Actually, it's called an article on the main page called "Observatory Footage Reveals Comet Atlas May Have Been Mitigated by NASA Deflection Campaign," and it shows video footage captured on the night of April 5th from the Igor Kostelak Observatory's northwest-facing camera, which shows what appears to be some sort of intelligently controlled deflection or obliteration campaign directed at the main body remnant of what was once solely Comet Atlas. So it looks like they attacked the main body of it. You guys can go look at it on IntelliHub.
All right, I'm going to give you an alternate. I want to give you an alternate.
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Newsbreak.com seems to republish a lot of IntelliHub articles, because just Googling for that takes me to Newsbreak. I guess if we click full story, does that? There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
All right, so when this happened, this object. So this is what I was going to say. This is a little bit of kind of the mourning and the sad story here. So when Shep first came on 4 weeks back and told us about Nibiru and the Blue Kachina, and then I was so excited when I did the research and we found Atlas, and it was C4 Atlas. And the reason was C4 Atlas had a blue tail, and the blue tail matched all of the writings that the Hopi writings and all the stuff that Shep had done with the Blue Kachina. And so it tied it together. The legend matched the science. And so that's an exciting moment when you're talking about something that had been documented 4,000 or 5,000 years ago and something that Shep knew about. And then it shows up 4 or 5,000 years later, it shows up and it matches all of the descriptions. It matches all the descriptions, and then it disappears. Then it breaks up into pieces. It's kind of sad. So,
because for 4,000 years, people like Shepard were waiting for it to come back, and then it flames out.
I'm kind of mourning. I'm mourning the Blue Kachina here. So that let's take a moment.
Plus, the Hellbop Colt was just one comet too early.
Ooh. All right. Now the other thing is, So now Shep just said something about how the heck did this thing just kind of disintegrate? This was way too far away for DART. DART has to get close to these asteroids. And when we did the test with OR2, by the way, OR2 in that animation I just showed you that you were showing everybody, Jason, OR2 is on the outside of that cloud. So this is what I mean by the illusion. You're going to read all the articles about OR2 and the DART test, but OR2 is one of the ones that's furthest away. It's on that cloud of objects that are coming together. OR2 is all the way on the outside. It's the ones that are on the inside that are the worrisome ones. And this is what I mean by it's an illusion. You're going to read the articles about OR2 and the DART test, and that's what they want you to look at, because OR2 is all the way out there. I'm looking at the other 30 or 40 of them that are all clustered together that we just learned about 6 or 8 weeks earlier. And that's why I think the president did what he did. I think he put the plan that Shepard showed us 4 weeks ago into place. And again, I think Shepard nailed the story as far as the using of the viral outbreak to convince not just America, but the world to get inside. And a lot of people want to know, like, well, why would you need everybody inside? And I don't know.
Well, also a good thing to point out real quick is if you take a look at shelter in place orders, I didn't realize this until a little bit in, but they're telling everyone shelter in place. So I started pulling up like shelter in place orders in the state I was in. And I realized that they're like literally telling you, seal yourself in your house, tape yourself in like for a whole biohazard, or as if like Mount St. Helens is going to erupt and there's going to be fallout or an asteroid fallout. And then they're like, seal up all air conditioner ducts and vents, make sure you got water, all this stuff. And you realize it's get your dust mask ready, it's have this whole thing that you would have in place if you really need to shelter in place from an event, like an extinction level event.
Shepard, people want to know if Space Force played a role in this at all.
It could. I haven't been able to check into that a lot, and I don't think anyone could like prove that or anything right now, but I think that it does somehow. I think that when they designed that mitigation plan for the White House in 2018, it was essentially like they came together like probably like a year before that. Military heads probably came together and said, look, Obama, this shit's getting real and we're going to need a plan.
It's technical military talk.
Yeah, and it probably escalated from there because it just looking at the whole trend, it looks like it ramped up since then, and it's been ramping up ever since. Now we got to wonder why, and I always predicted this, but why these lockdowns aren't lifted, because I feel like the event's not here. Now, whether that's the passing of this planet that's going to ramp up as it comes in for 13 months and out for 13 months, and things that get worse for 13 months and then kind of ramp down to back to normal, or whether that's just asteroid strikes, because we're going to go through the debris tail of Halley's Comet, which we happen to be going through right now, by the way, and also the debris trail of Atlas. And did they mitigate any of these objects, and have they split them into chunks? Have they used nuclear? There's only certain ways you can do this according to all their plans that I got into, and you can like use nuclear deflection, where you like blow a nuclear weapon up near an asteroid and it kind of pushes it away, but you try to keep it intact. And then there's nuclear obliteration, but it can pelt the Earth, and then there's brace for impact, and there's also kinetic deflection where they use a kinetic impactor. And I believe they did that with that one in Russia that you guys were talking about. If you go and you Google videos, I believe they use the Rods from God platform to mitigate that.
You spoke
for the
about that
first
in
time.
the first episode.
Yeah, and if you go look at real close-up imagery of that, you'll see like basically like a rod enter it from the back. Like it looks like a long projectile, and directly from the angle that it came from, essentially, and it looks like that's when it airbursted. And I already knew they had these technologies because I was studying this long ago, but it looks like they might have even have tested that right then, or hit it up and then called Putin and said, hey, you want to give us a pat on the back because we just airbursted this thing before it impacted, or something like that. I don't know exactly what happened, but I feel like also there's the Star Wars platform was put together during the Reagan administration when they knew there was a threat coming. I talked about Rex 84 and Oliver North and them setting up concentration camps for the American people, which are now essentially the FEMA camps. And all this came to a head in the Reagan administration. It's because they found with their IRAS telescope and other astronomers before that, back to the 1800s, and then through old documentation in Sumerian culture, 6,000, 8,000 years old, with Anunnaki kings lists going back 550,000 years, and that correlating with various civilizations across the board on the whole entire planet on a grand scale, basically confirms a lot of this movement of this planet and this stuff. So that's why, like you see when they went in and raided into Iraq, they did Operation Planet X. They went in, they grabbed some of these Sumerian artifacts. That's why you also see ISIS trying to tear down some of these artifacts and obtain them for themselves or destroy them.
Why?
Because
they
ISIS
think it's...
ISIS is essentially an army of like Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the globalists. And if you look at groups like the Smithsonian, so like if they find giant bones that exist, and there's 7-foot tall giants that exist on Catalina Island, well, the Smithsonian comes in, which is a Rockefeller funded and backed organization. So it's an apparatus of the elites, and they come in and they snatch all this information up and they bury it from the general public. They do that with crop circles, with UFO encounters, and they fund people for millions of dollars that do all this research in these various areas, and then they snatch that research up and they hoard it for themselves in their secret and private groups and underground bases and Bilderberg meetings. And
dude, I love how you bring
like
these
that.
things up that I have never heard anything about at all. And I'll tell you what's interesting. There's probably 50 devices sitting right here that I've clicked OK when it says we're going to use your microphone to listen to everything that you say. Because after we started talking about this, my YouTube feed, or maybe just because I'm putting those YouTube videos out or whatever, it became more heavily skewed towards this stuff. And I know you know this guy, Shepard. I never heard of this guy before a week or two ago. Bob Lazar. I saw a very interesting documentary about Bob Lazar made by the same YouTuber who made Pedogate 2020. I'm talking about Mouthy Buddha. Made a video investigating if Bob Lazar is on the level or full of crap. He's a guy who claims to have worked at Area 51 or some division of Area 51. He spoke about element 115, which was at the time that he first brought it up, an unknown element that did not exist on the periodic table. One of the most interesting aspects about this guy's story, he's been around since the 80s. His story has not changed. Element 115 is in fact now on the periodic table, and he speaks about anti-gravity, the overall basis of his story.
You want to see it? You want to see anti-gravity? I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you right now on YouTube. On YouTube.
Oh, okay. Not the sleight of hand trick. I'm just saying, Bob Lazar.
No. Real anti-gravity on YouTube. Sure. Not a sleight of hand trick.
Where do we get it?
On YouTube. Fun with magnets.
Just
There's
to finish
a
the
material.
Thought
Pyrolytic carbon. I'm going to
Okay.
dig it up for you.
You
Pyrolytic
guys know
carbon.
about nano superconductors and how they can go around and
You
defy
don't need.
gravity?
Hang
Okay,
on.
before we go in
Don't
50
change the
directions at
subject.
once, guys,
Don't change the
what I'm
subject.
talking about
Yes.
is Bob Lazar claims that he was working at Area 51. He was hired
Right.
there at a young age, and that what he was doing was reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology that the United States government has in its possession, a variety of different, spacecrafts, alien spacecrafts, which some were derived from archaeological digs, variety of different units. And he talks about this reactor,
Yeah.
one of which was apparently destroyed during an experiment that they told everybody was a nuclear test because it killed everybody and made a huge explosion. It's a fascinating story. Have you, Shepard, ever had opportunity to interview Bob Lazar?
I've had correspondence with him over email, but I've interviewed multiple times. I'm basically friends with John Lear, whose father was the maker of the Learjet. And
Yeah.
John Lear was part of the whole Bob Lazar
Yeah, they're
scenario.
friends.
So he was one of the people that Bob Lazar said, "Hey, look, let's go down here with this motorhome and let's check out. At a certain time, we're going to watch this UFO test." And it really
Wednesdays,
panned out.
he knew when they were
Yeah.
doing them. And this is another important part of his story that I think proves it. My problem with John Lear is that I've had personal correspondence with him. I was very unimpressed with him. He said things to me that made no sense. He had no evidence, nothing to do with Bob Lazar. He had no evidence for his claims that holograms were used instead of airplanes on 9/11. And the
Right.
issue that I have is John Lear was a pilot for the CIA, so it's possible that
I've
him
heard that,
befriending.
and well,
Hang
so
on, hang
like
on.
he explained.
Hang on. I don't want to hear his explanation, because when he had his opportunity to explain it to me, his explanation was that I don't believe in holograms. So I don't want the John Lear zero evidence story to pollute the Bob Lazar good
Right.
evidence story. And what I have personally learned only recently is that when you sort of become friends with somebody who claims to be a former CIA agent, I don't think they're really your friend, and I'm not sure exactly what their intention is for hanging out with you. But let's put a pin in
Yeah.
it here, fellas, because we could talk for hours and hours. Shepard, we'll have you back in, for another show, maybe in a week or so. And everybody can watch John Cullen's coronavirus investigation on Fridays on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. And same thing on Crowdsource the Truth. Any quick last words, Shepard?
No, just check out some of this information. If people think it's over the top, and just keep asking yourself what could be the justification for this lockdown and the extended lockdowns, and there's just really nothing that's justifying it in terms of the virus, at least, as you guys probably already have came to the conclusion.
Absolutely. And I also want to remind people to visit intellihub.com/donate. People who sponsor Shepard for $100 or more are going to get a signed copy of the limited edition movie Shade. So if you're a Shepard Ambellas fan, it's a great way to get a piece of memorabilia that is not going to be coming back. Like the blue Kachina, once it's gone, it's gone. John, anything you want to say before we go?
Magnetic levitation with pyrolytic carbon. Pyrolytic carbon is the magic material. PYROLYTIC carbon. And if ever there was a magic material, this is it. And when you watch magnetic levitation with pyrolytic carbon, the thing that's magical here is it doesn't require superconductivity. It doesn't require electricity. So this is at room temperature. You will see a material levitate ad infinitum for 40,000 years. It will hover with no power, with no batteries, and you can pull this up on YouTube. Pyrolytic carbon magnetic levitation, and it's like Nikola Tesla was right. All right, we just haven't figured out how to modulate gravity like we know how to modulate radio waves, right? So we know how to do AM and FM modulation. The little piece of black is called pyrolytic carbon, and they're going to use it on top of a field of magnets, and it will levitate, and it will just levitate forever for 40,000, 50,000 years. There's no batteries here. There's no electricity. These are neodymium magnets, and that is pyrolytic carbon. And
doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Well, you're not on the good video.
Well, people can search for that. People can search for that.
You'll
on
find
YouTube.
a whole bunch of examples of this, and I think once he does whatever he's going to do here, this thing is going to start to levitate, and
He's
eventually
demonstrating how the polarity of the magnets and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, there's more than one video, and this is not the good one. So
he's combining the magnets to increase the strength of the magnetic field, and when the strength becomes sufficient, I guess he's demonstrating low friction. Yes, that is an interesting.
No, it's not a question of, it's not low friction, it's levitation. There's no low friction.
I think what we're going to see now is he's going to get stronger magnets, and it will.
There's people that levitate on flying carpets.
Right. Yeah, we'll let people search for this stuff.
All right. So this is real. The point here is that object will levitate forever with no batteries. This is not superconductivity. There's no batteries. There's no electricity. That will hover for 40,000 years, just like that. Not touching. It's not touching.
That's free energy.
It's magnetism.
That's right.
I do want to remind people to visit the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. People can follow John's research from Las Vegas and now coronavirus. You can also see simulcasts of all the videos that John appears on Crowdsource the Truth. Don't forget to sponsor guests that appear on Crowdsource the Truth. It's very important that we do that. This keeps independent journalists and researchers going. It eliminates the undue economic influence of a corporate sponsor, and it's the best way to make sure that you can decide about the information that you want to see. We don't want to leave it up to Google, who as soon as you hit on something meaty, they just say, oh, well, anybody who says anything we don't like, we're going to delete it. So I want to thank all of the generous Patreon and Subscribestar sponsors who make the show possible. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.